It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week, I welcome first-time guest Samyuktha Neeraja, and she's going to share with us her DEI story and how we can all be more comfortable in our own skin. It's July 29th, 2024. Welcome to episode 248. Hey everybody, it's Monday, July 29th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp. I'm a CAE and an ACNP, and so glad to have you here as we wrap up the summer month of July. It is Disability Pride Month, and so I'm really excited to have another first-time guest this year, Samyuktha Neeraja, and she is going to share her DEI story with us today. But before we jump into our topic, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be, and thanks everyone for joining us. If you haven't subscribed or follow us yet, please take a couple of seconds and do that so you don't miss any exciting episodes in the future. But let's get to our topic. This is a very important topic. DEI overall for the world in general is important. We all need to be aware of who we actually are as individuals and what our stories are. And so I'm so pleased to welcome Samyuktha today. Welcome. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Sure thing, Cecilia. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Samyuktha Neeraja, MPH-CAE. I live in the Chicago area, and I've been working in the association industry for a little over 8.5 years. My current position is at the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology, AANA for short, and DEI is something I live and breathe every day. I am a South Asian woman with dwarfism, which is a physical disability that results in adult short stature. And because of my life experiences, because of all the obstacles I've had to overcome with my having a disability, and just the education and awareness that I've embarked on to make sure that the world is inclusive and kind, it's just been a huge passion of mine just to be able to share my story and advocate for others. So thank you again for having me.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. We have talked about DEI several times on the show. I am an advocate of it. I think it's very important. I started calling myself the aging naive because the older I get, the less I understand why people aren't more aware of other people's needs as individuals, why we're so mean to each other sometimes, which is why I'm like an aging naive. It's like, okay, I'm naive. It's pretty easy to be kind. It's pretty easy to be considerate. We can all, at the very least, be courteous to each other and considerate. So that's why I think this is an important topic. Now, you have a really interesting, varied backstory. So would you like to share some of that with us?
Sure, absolutely. So I was born in India, and I immigrated here with my mom when I was just a little over a year old. And it was funny because, well, it's not funny. It's a story. But what was interesting is that 3 months I moved here to the U.S. after the ADA was signed. So the ADA was signed in July of 1990, and in October, my mom and I fly here. We come here, and my mom already making the most ultimate sacrifice, leaving a country, leaving her home that she has known for 25 years, coming with me, a disabled kid, baby still, not knowing what our future is going to be, and also having to assimilate, start a new life in a new country, a new culture, a new type of society. So it was a lot. It's more than a lot. It is something you can't measure. So it's definitely something that I'm never going to forget, especially knowing our history, Indian heritage, and which I'm also very, very proud of. When growing up, I also am the oldest of 5 daughters. I have 4 younger sisters, and they were all born here. We grew up here in the Chicago area. And while, surviving, living, my mom made sure we never forgot our Indian heritage, our Indian roots. So it's the core of my identity. I'm so proud of who I am being Indian, and it's something that I can never, I am not who I am if I'm not Indian. So I grow up, I go to school, really raising education, raising awareness about being a little person, and a lot of attitudes I had to change, myself. I definitely held a lot of internalized ableism where I thought I didn't want to be little, or I would forget I was little, or that there was something, wrong with me, that there was something that had to be fixed, so that I had to be more like average size. But then as I'm going up, as I'm really getting more confident in who I am, I realize no, I'm perfect for who I am. I am enough, and I want to be able to show that. Like, I felt like not only I was proving to everyone how capable I am and what that I could be successful no matter what, I also needed to prove that to myself. So it's been a wild ride. It's been a journey for sure. These last, 35 years of my life, and I've definitely accomplished a lot. I had to go through a lot to get to where I am, but I I don't regret it. I don't regret a single thing.
That's wonderful to hear. That's really inspiring because no matter who we are, we have these things we have to overcome as we're growing. Because again, people can be so cruel, especially children. You think children would be nicer, but they tend not to be. I guess they just speak the truth of what they see around them. But I do know sometimes they're cruel, and so we all have to become comfortable with ourselves. And when we were preparing for this episode, you mentioned about getting comfortable in your own skin. Uh, that was something I had to do as well for different reasons. But how how did you see your progression as you became more comfortable in your skin? What were some of the things you realized in that process?
Yeah. So just first, I wanted to piggyback off of your comment about children. I'll be honest with you, children are the bane of my existence
Oh my gosh.
because they're curious, right? They're of course they're curious. They don't have a filter, and there are days when I was a kid, I would wear blinders. I would literally wear blinders in the sense like I just to block out all the ignorance, to block out all the cruelty. Like I would always want to be invisible just so I could, get from one place to another, just so I could do my thing and get out of there. And my sisters and my mom would be the one to advocate for me. Um, and even but as I grew up, as I started getting more comfortable, I realized this is something that's not going to go away. This is something, this cruelty, ignorance, this all these questions, stares, points, second glances, comments, what have you, are not going to go away. This is something that I learned to accept, that this is going to happen for the rest of my life. And you develop that. You either decide to sit around and be sad about it, or you build that backbone. You build that backbone and strength. You develop a system for yourself where, sure, there are days where it's going to be hard. We all have our bad days. We all have our good days. There are days where we just want to, like, don't want to deal with the world and just want to go out, do our thing, and get back home, and then do nothing. But then there are days, no, you feel, okay, I'm gonna do these things. Sure, I'm gonna have to deal with certain comments or what have you, but you develop a system, or you develop a way to combat those misconceptions, those um ignorance. And that's what I did. This as an example, like with kids especially, if they stare, I just say hi. And it's so funny when the reactions I get are very, like, off the chart. They either they get freaked out because they're so surprised that I talk, or I saw them. or they would say hi back, but the worst thing I'm telling you are their parents. Like I'll say it off the top of my lungs. Parents need to educate their children. They need to use this as a moment to educate. Now, it doesn't have to be at that moment when they see me, but either at home, more often than not, they either ignore their child or they get freaked out. They just shush their child, or they kind of run away from the situation because it's like, oh, they should avoid us, or we're taboo or something. It's very invalidating. And when the kids grow up, they're gonna see different people. They're gonna move through the world, navigate a diverse world. This is not the first time. Like, I'm not the first person you're gonna see who's different. They're gonna have to learn to be kind and to be respectful, and it's never too early to learn about those things. And they don't have to have the answer. Like, say for example, if the kid, you know, pulls their mom and say, "Hey, why is she little?" or "Look at her." The mom or the parent or whoever is there can acknowledge the child's comment, acknowledge the person, and say, "I don't know, but everyone comes in different shapes and sizes. It's important to be kind, or if you want, if the situation warrants it, why don't you ask the person? Why don't you ask him or them if they'd like to talk to you, or say hi, or acknowledge that person." That's the thing. Like, don't shush them, don't shun them. This is, we all share the same space in a sense. We all share the same world. So it's about time to really bridge that gap.
And I think I love that you give that advice, because what this says to me is that the parents of these children were maybe raised by insensitive parents who that was their reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting passed on to the next generation. And why people are so uncomfortable around people that may not be like them is astounding to me. It's like when I was in high school, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. And so, there's a racial divide in that state. It came in the country as a slave state. Well, I went to a big high school on the edge of suburbia. It was a big Catholic high school. And it was mostly white students because that was the demographic at the time. But, there were some Black students. I actually had some of the kids come up to me and say, "How do I talk to Black people?" And I would just look at them because I grew up in a neighborhood that had some diversity in it. Everybody wasn't white. And I just looked and I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've never met a Black person." I'm like, "What are you talking about? How can you not have ever met a Black person?" And like, "Well, I never have. How do I talk to them?" I'm like, "They're people. You just talk to them. Don't look like you." I just astounded by that. Even as a teenager, you just think that because we're not all the same. To your point, there are people that look different from us. They sound different from us. Maybe they like to eat different kinds of food than we like to eat. And to me, that's an opportunity to learn something, maybe make a new connection, maybe make a new friend, learn something new about the world. Because if we were all the same, the world would be so boring, I think.
So dull. It would be so dull. I think that example you gave, they've lived in like a shelter. They're very sheltered. And sometimes people say like, "Oh, it's good. I'm glad I lived in a sheltered because life," but they think that by being sheltered, you're being protected and that you're not being exposed to the dangers or the negativity of the world. But then how do you develop that resilience when bad things happen to you, when you reach a hard point in your life? That if you've been sheltered so much all the time, you don't learn the skills to be able to push through that. Like, someone's been either doing it for you or you've been just having it easy. It's privilege. It's coming from a place of privilege. And I've had a conversation with someone like late last year, I think around the holidays. Like, we were sitting next to each other at lunch, and sure, they're coming from a good place, but they said to me, they're like, "Yeah, something like that. I don't see you as having a disability." And I responded to them and I'm like, "But I do." Like there's still that mindset that having a disability is something to be pitied, or it's something wrong. It's something to be like ashamed of. And so we talked, and they really, changed their perspective. But they also said that they lived in this area, I think in like, I think somewhere up north or another state where it's a small community. And they said like, oh yeah, I've just lived in a small community. I just haven't like it's so important just to be nice to each other, right? I'm like, yeah, it is, but it's also important to be aware. It's also important to be aware about all the other people because we don't fit one mold. We're not just what you think it should be or we should be.
Right. And I do think a lot of times people think making a comment like that is nice. Like, well, I just see you. I don't see the different pieces of you that make you a whole individual. But we do have to recognize it. It is there. It is different. How you navigate the world is very different from somebody who is what we might call a normal sized individual.
I would say average. We actually, the preferred term is average size.
Average size. Okay, average size person. So I'm very average size. At 5'5", which is about average.
That is average.
Yeah. I'm very average size. So average size. So when you navigate the world, I imagine that has some challenges for you.
Yes.
Environment.
Yes. So because my disability results in adult short stature, I need a lot of step stools to reach things that are not easily placed for me. So I have to have I have a step stool in my home for just doing basic functioning things that average size people take for granted, such as washing my hands, brushing my teeth, getting things in the kitchen cabinets, getting things in the upper shelves of the closets. My clothes are altered. Some of them, my mom, she's a really good sewer. She's adjusted some of my clothes for me. And also some of the women's average size pants or capris are pants for me. So that there may not need to be much adjustment there. And then I wear extra small women's size tops, but then some tops that where the sleeves are long, I just have to fold the sleeves. So I have to find different ways to navigate, different solutions, different ways to adjust and make it work for me. I also drive. I have my own car, and how I drive is that there are pedal extensions. They attach to the brake pedal and the gas pedal, and so I'm able to reach that way. And some other little people actually use hand controls to drive their car, and that's it. And my seat's closer. I have a backrest so I could and a seat cushion so I can see above the dashboard. So, and the thing is, like, what's important is that even within dwarfism, there are so many different types of dwarfism. Like, we come in all different types. There's disproportionate types of dwarfism. There's proportionate types of dwarfism, and we experience it differently. Even someone with the same type of dwarfism that I have, which is achondroplasia, they'll still look different, or their body shape, body size would still be different. So we're not all the same, like you said, and not all disabled people or not all little people are the same either.
That's interesting. So do you find that people are sensitive to the fact that you might need an accommodation? So, for example, if you go to a restaurant, or do you like if you have to ride the bus? I know a lot of buses now, they can lower the steps for people who needed to be closer to the ground to get into the bus. So do you find, because in your own home environment, your own car, you can make sure those things are there that you need, but
right.
Like in public to anything, a restaurant, movie theater, do you find that they have what you need?
Not all the time, or mostly not. I have to ask for it ahead of time, usually with movie theaters, and I usually can get around. I can walk stairs, and I'm able to navigate, movie theaters and public places in general. One of the biggest hindrances is the bathroom. Bathrooms are hit or miss with the public sinks because everything is so high. Some of them are starting to have smaller sinks, especially like putting them in for children. Like that's what I don't understand sometimes is there's children in this world. So I'm the same height as a lot of kids. So why wouldn't you think to put in something that's a kid would want to use? Like kids are not going to be able to reach like these sinks, for example, but they expect like, oh, the parent's going to be there to help them anyway, so we don't need to do that. Like that's not always the case. So grocery stores are hit or miss also because I would generally have to ask someone to get something off the high shelf. So I'm always prepared to ask for help. Um, but mostly I'm able to figure out a way to get what I need, get around.
Well, that's good to know because I know a lot of places. Again, I'm average size. I'm about 5'5". Although if you ask my rheumatologist, I've shrank a little bit, which I refuse to accept that. But even me at average size for a woman in the US, I still find some things are hard to use. So, it's like things are hard to reach. And, my husband's 5'11", and he will put things up really high because he can reach them. And it's like, I can't reach them. So even just two average sized people, and we have this disparity, which is why I asked, what is your actual experience like? That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about bathrooms, and I wonder if more places that provide public restrooms, like restaurants, movie theaters, or just anything, convention centers, are thinking about that, adding step stools or whatever it is people might need to be able to use those things more easily. Do you think that's a trend?
It it's a one-off. It's isolated because in some like airports, I travel a lot. In some airports, I'm seeing, oh, the sinks are actually pretty lower, or in some airports, I see that there's like a stepper they added sometimes in the sinks. I'm like, oh, great, I could get on this, and then you just kind of push it back underneath. But in convention centers, it's so inconsistent. It's so inconsistent, and I just feel like a step stool, for example, it's not expensive. It is an investment. That's the thing. If people start seeing accommodations as an investment and see us as having value, as contributing members of society that make the world better, I think that shift can be great. I think it could just like move mountains in that way. So one thing I wanted to point out is actually ASAE. I want to give a shout out to ASAE because I've been involved in ASA for the last few years, especially I took the CAE exam, went through that, and DELP. I'm in the Diversity Executive Leadership Program, and I'm in the second year cohort. I'm the class of 2023 to 2025, and my experience in DELP has given me a louder voice to advocate for what I need. And ASAE has really prioritized DEI. They call their initiative DEIA. They add accessibility to DEI. So DEIA, they've really made that a priority for associations and an ASAE itself. So ever since I came in DELP, they have really taken care of me and ensuring that my needs were met, especially at the ASAE annual meeting. Like it is a chaotic meeting. It is just so much going on. It's so overwhelming. I just can't believe they put how can anyone put a meeting like this? And they still managed to get me everything I needed, and it's hard for me to trust like these big convention centers or big places because I've had so many experiences where I just ask for one thing, especially when traveling. I would ask. A lot of times hotels would simply refuse to provide a step stool for me. And in their minds, they think it's a liability, but they're the ones that are liability because they're the ones that are breaking the law. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, requires hotels that are places of public accommodation to accommodate.
That's
so right. Just to get one step stool, I've had to, fight tooth and nail, but just seeing ASAE really make that commitment to ensure accessibility for me and other. And I really hope other disabled association members feel the same way as well, in that they've really made it a point to do better. And if they can, others can.
I agree. I remember when the DELT program first started. I've been a member of ASAE since the mid 90s. So I remember when it started with a grant from American Express. And then when the grant ran out, John Graham was president at the time, and he said, "This is important. We're going to keep doing this." And so they found a way to keep DELP going, and it's a great program. And a lot of our current leaders have been in the DELP program, like Artisha Moore at Association Forum.
Love Artisha.
We all love Artisha. Hey, Artisha, hello from Radio Free 501c. I think it's a great program, and also not everybody may be aware of this or remember it, but back in 2022, the ASA Board of Directors added Champion DEI as one of our standards of conduct for our association. And I think that's really important. I am really excited to be appointed. I'm a new appointee to the ASA Ethics Committee for 24-25. So I'm looking forward to that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our kickoff meeting, which is actually tomorrow, July 30th. So looking forward to that and being part of that. And I again think DEI is an important policy, and we all need to be aware of it. And I had seen, I'm glad you brought that up, Samyuktha, that they had added DEIA accessibility, because I'm hearing more people talk about it and being aware of it. And, recovering from a broken leg, I'm much more aware of accessibility right now because I cannot walk stairs and I need a wheelchair and I need crutches. And so I'm planning to go to the ASA annual meeting. And so I updated my registration form and said, well, I have some mobility issues. And I got an email back with all the information I needed. Like, here's how accessible the convention center is. Here's where you can get a wheelchair. And here's a rental company, I guess they're the official rental company for ASA annual, if you need to rent a scooter or you want to rent a wheelchair and have one all the time. So, I agree. I say that supporting your statement because they really are aware of it and they try very hard to make sure everybody gets what they need. Hotels not giving you a step stool is definitely a legal liability issue because they're concerned, well, if you fall off the step stool or trip, you might sue us. But as you pointed out, they are in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act because you must make a reasonable accommodation for an individual when they request it. And fun fact, very early in my career, when I first came to Washington, I worked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The Americans with Disabilities Act was one of the issues I worked on in our department, in our labor resources department. We were there when it got passed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I wasn't in the room when it got signed or whatever. I mean, we were working on it when it got passed. And then we were able to educate our members because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, of course, is a business organization. So, we would get phone calls from people. Well, I'm a small family-run restaurant. How can I comply with the ADA? And it could be something as simple as being willing to read the menu to a visually impaired customer. You didn't have to do a lot of huge thousands of dollars of investment. You just had to be prepared to help people when they needed it, give them that assistance so that they can enjoy your restaurant. And so I actually got to work on that issue after it got passed as well, and work on some of the, representing the chamber to the members on some of the policy aspects of that. And would talk with, occasionally got to give a news interview to newspapers about it from time to time. So it's been kind of a thread through my career as I look back, and it's just something to me that if we are all going to be living together and we all want to be respected as individuals. And so that means we have to respect everybody as individuals. And I bring it back again to my comment about the aging naive. The older I get, the less I understand why people can't be more open, especially as we're grown-ups. When we're little kids, we really don't know any better. And that's why we need to be taught to be sensitive, to be aware, to just ask questions, be considerate. But as adults, we seem to forget that. And I find that very troubling for people because it's very easy to just say, oh, hello, is there something I can, do you need any assistance? I don't assume people need assistance because most people are like you. They're very, independent, self-reliant, and they get things done. But, I think it's okay to say to people, oh, do you need any assistance? Is there something I can help you with? If not, okay, you're good to go. Let's let it go. I also think that Now, is this something you've run across? People who keep trying to help you, even if you tell them you're okay, you have what you need. Do you
Oh
find?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just I'd be just doing my thing. I'd be just like totally fine. I'd be just and then they just see me. They're like, "Do you need help?" Like it's okay, buddy. It's okay. Are you sure? Because I can do just
Back off, man. I got it.
back off, back off. Totally,
And it's
totally.
like it's nice, but it's like, okay, you got to know when this. If somebody tells you they're okay, they're okay.
They're okay. I
It's
think
like,
just yeah, it's like works both ways in the sense like really listen to us, really believe us. I think like it's exhausting just trying to have to live each day sometimes or having to navigate a world that's not designed for you or that's not really willing to accept you all the time.
mhm.
And it's just annoying when you have to like continue to explain yourself or like convince someone that you're disabled or convince someone because there's disability is not physical always. It's neurodiversity, it's um chronic illness, it's their disability spans so many categories. And again, like to have to explain to somebody, to have to convince somebody or something like that, like it's all about what the other person is feeling. It's like they have to like be convinced or they have an agenda in their mind or it's so it's not about them. It's not it's just I just people surprise me sometimes or it's just don't
Yeah.
understand.
Well, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that because so often people make it about them and not about the other person, and it's the tape that's playing in their head, and it has nothing to do with actually going on in the actual situation or with that other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree with that, and I think navigating the physical environment. I wanted to talk with you about that because just curious. I mean, I can navigate it, but what is it like for someone who has dwarfism, who isn't the same height as average people, which the world is designed for the average person,
Mm-hmm.
not the really tall people either. Really tall people have a problem
That's
in
true.
navigating the world as well. Door frames, they can't fit, they have to bend over. Cars might be too small for them. They might not be able to find, like you, they have to find longer pants. So there's that whole thing of like, how can we all just be more aware of the fact that we're not all average. Most of us are, but not everybody. And so how can we make sure everybody is included? And I think to me anyway, this is my opinion. To me,
Mm-hmm.
the most important letter in DEIA is equity. So that would be E, equity, because equity is meeting people where they are and giving that person what that person needs, not what everybody else gets. And I think that is really why equity to me is the most important letter in DEI, because that's where I talk about this in some of the CAE courses and study groups that I lead, and we talk about DEI and why it's important and how you can apply it and why you need to be aware of it. And I really emphasize with the equity, it's the concept of, well, everybody who comes to the office gets a desk, but is everybody getting the desk they need? So if somebody is using a wheelchair to get around, they need a different kind of desk. Or if somebody is visually impaired, they need a different kind of computer. So sure, everybody gets a desk and everybody gets a computer, but are they getting the right desk and the right computer? And it's really that simple to just think about it and just ask people, what do you need to succeed? It's a very easy question.
100%. 100%. Like inclusion is not the same as equity.
Mm-hmm.
Inclusion, I always say diversity is the makeup, diversity is the fact and the representation. Inclusion is bringing them into the building or bringing them to the table. Equity is making sure they have the resources, they have what they need so that they could fully participate at the table. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not a one-stop shop. And as I mentioned before, like we're all like what one disabled person will need would be different, can be different from another disabled person. So like you said, like I think we need to just be willing to have a conversation. We need to be willing to listen. Listen. That's the thing. And like really take yourself out. That's where, allyship, advocacy, that's a whole other conversation
Yeah.
comes in. Comes in. But it's really about not making it about you. Like if you're trying to help for yourself, somebody, some people say, "Oh, put yourself in that other person's shoes." I'm like, sure, that works to an extent, because there are some people's stories, people's journeys, people's experiences that you're never gonna understand, and it is okay. It is okay that you can't relate. Like more often than not, I'm trying to share my story, share my experience, or there's a topic where everyone's like, I'm trying to share my perspective on something coming from a real life experience, and there are times where someone who is totally different from me, totally like tends to kind of turn the table towards them and tries to relate or tries to like share a story that they think is similar to mine. And I'm like, that is not nowhere close to what I was talking about. So you don't need to relate. You don't need to do that. And it's okay. I think what's important is to just listen and listen to understand their story, and just be there. Just provide that safe space.
Yeah. And I want to repeat that. I think that's a really powerful statement. Listen to understand their experience and provide that safe space. That's really powerful statement. I think that's a great thing for everybody to listen to. And one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about before we wrap up the episode, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad, me too. I was getting very into it.
Well, no, it's good. No, it's great because really everybody has their own story and we all have our lived experience and we all need something a little different. And making that assumption that like, well, if if this is what I need, it must be what you need. No, actually not. And we all need that consideration. But one of the things you and I were talking about is our names and how our names get mispronounced quite a lot. And because I always ask people, how do you want me to say your name? And what do you like to go by? Because when we were preparing for this episode, I asked you how to pronounce your name correctly. I'm going to say it again, Samyuktha.
Yes, thank you.
Right, Samyuktha. But I asked you if you like to go by Sam, and I'd like you to share your response to that question.
Yes, I do not go by Sam. I don't go by any other name other than Samyuktha, and it means unity. My name means unity in Sanskrit or Sanskrit. That's how the Americanized pronunciation of it, which is the ancient language of India. So my name is a symbol of my heritage, of my culture, of my identity. And when someone tries to shorten it or tries to Americanize it, it's making it about them. Making me feel like my name is a burden or an inconvenience. And that's not respectful. You are denying my heritage. You are denying my identity when you do that. Just ask. I'd rather have you ask. I'd rather have you butcher it 100 times, because that means I know you're trying. I know you're pronouncing it. You're making that effort to pronounce it. And I always also say, don't say, "Oh, your name is so hard to pronounce. Oh, I don't want to say your name." I get that all the time. Just say, "Hey, I have a hard time pronouncing my name. Can you help me?" And I'm happy to do it. Don't assume that when you see a name that you think is hard to pronounce or a name that you haven't seen before, just ask. Like, we'd rather have you do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you said that because, again, just so rude to say your name is too hard for me to say. But not everybody who lives in the United States has English as their first language. So they might think your English name is hard to say. So seriously, because
Exactly.
it's different. It's different the way people speak. So just again, rude. And I shared with you that people have trouble saying my name sometimes. Cecilia, I get called all kinds of stuff. So I just usually joke around and just say, don't call me late for dinner. But but it's really our identity. Our names change sometimes as we grow. When I was a little kid, I had a different name than I do now. And that's okay because this is who I am now. So, really everything about us is part of our identity and who we are and how we present ourselves to the world. And I think that even as I'm going to say it this way, as simple as saying someone's name, saying it correctly, or asking them or calling them the name they want to be called, not the name you decide to call them. It's really important. So, well, this has been a great conversation. You mentioned earlier, Samyuktha, that advocacy is a whole other topic. So, hopefully you'll come back in the future and talk with us about that, DEI advocacy.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
That would be great. Well, I always like to ask my guests, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today from this conversation? And if they wanted to get in touch with you and talk more about your DEI story and DEI in general, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So first, to get in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Samyuktha Neeraja. I think it might be the handle is at Samyu Neera. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Or you can send me an email at my first initial, Neeraja, Neeraja, at AANA.com. And the one takeaway I'd like to give to our audience is DEI is not something to be feared. I'm seeing a lot of backlash these days, or people trying to label it as reverse discrimination or giving people who are not qualified, just the job or like a special treatment or something. And it's not that at all. It's about people who are from underserved, underrepresented communities to have a chance. It's about fairness. It's about kindness. It's about equitable treatment. And it's about being better humans. So it's nothing to be feared. No one's losing anything. We're all in this together.
Thank you. Hear, hear. That is my opinion as well. We're all in this together. So it's also about opportunities. And I have said this for many years. The only time civilization moves forward is when we work together.
Always.
DEI is an opportunity to work together. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you again, Samyuktha. Be very careful with that. And I love that it means unity in Sanskrit. That's beautiful. So, well, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So don't forget to subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service. We're pretty much everywhere, so you can find us wherever you want to listen or watch. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. If you're looking for CAE education, whether you're getting ready for the CAE exam or need some renewal credits like the ethics course, we also have our education program. We offer the ethics session once a month, and our registration for the CAE fall session courses open on July 23rd. And we launch our fall session the week of September 3rd. So check that out and see if we have something that will help you out. So that's it for this week. On behalf of Samyuktha and myself, and please remember to pronounce our names correctly. We'll see you next time.